presentation tonight. I just wanted to take a minute to introduce the Hamilton Development Corp. The HDC was voted on at town meeting last fall and ratified by a special act of the state legislature. We are a separate entity from the town with a mission to support planned economic development to promote sustainable long-term growth and the economic health of the village. There are 5 members on this board with various backgrounds. We're all Hamilton residents that are committed to advancing the goals of a vibrant, attractive, livable downtown. I live in the village. I'm an architect and also on the planning board at the Affordable Housing Trust. Bill Geisness, an abutter to the village and previously on the Economic Development Committee, is also an architect. Rick Mitchell directs business development for a consulting engineering firm and is a member of the planning board as well. Dave Carey is a former selectman and a principal in a firm specializing in finance and energy efficiency. And Anthony Nickus specializes in real estate and affordable housing. The reason we invited you here tonight is to help the HDC and the towns of Hamilton and Wenham create a vision for the future of the village. The goal is to seek your input on what you want the area to look like in, say, 10 or 20 years. Keep that question in mind during the meeting tonight. Before I turn this over to Bill Geisness for a few minutes, I want to mention the HDC is putting together a public educational session on wastewater management and treatment systems a little later this fall. This will be done in accordance with a consulting engineer that specializes in municipal wastewater treatment. The goal is to inform and educate everyone about the current technologies available in wastewater treatment and the potential costs and benefits the system could provide to the downtown area. This is a critical step, along with what we are doing tonight in promoting a healthy, sustainable, and vibrant village that is the heart of the community. So, Bill, you want to come up and
Hi, thank you all for coming tonight. I wanted to take a quick walk around Willow Street and then back up 1A visually with you, just to let you know of the changes that have gone on over the past couple of years, along with potential changes that could be coming up in the upcoming years. So it's the reason why you really can't say you don't want change in the town of Hamilton, because change is going to occur, with or without you voicing your opinion. And what we hope to get out of tonight is what you would like to see, as Brian mentioned, in the next 10 to 20 years for the town of Hamilton. So if we start over on the corner of Asbury and Willow, Hansberry's hardware store used to be located right near that corner. It was an old barn and a hardware store. Currently, it's Dodge Tree Service and all their equipment that are located there. Right across the street from that is a fairly current housing development that's got a very large fence that really blocks off the neighborhood. And do you want that kind of image in the village area of Hamilton? As you proceed further down, if you're not aware, the building that was just recently renovated back just beside Willowdale, in between Willowdale and Dodge Tree Service. That house that sits in front of that property was just torn down, and a 4-story building is going up there, if you're not aware of that. On the lower level, partially below grade, will be parking, as the whole site is pretty much all parking. The next 2 floors up from the parking level are going to be business, and then there's an apartment above that, or a residential unit above that. So it'll be a good test for height in the village area of Hamilton, and it's a good discussion to have later on tonight. As you proceed further down that street, on the corner of Railroad Ave and Willow is a town-owned piece of property. Right next to that is the Accord Food Pantry, a recent project that was done with Housing Above. If all of you are aware, Mr. McCrae's retail property is for sale. What is the potential of that piece of property in the next 10 years? And then as you proceed around the corner and come on to 1A or Bay Road, we were just informed the other day that Wenham passed their historical commission just approved some renovations to the mobile station on the corner. That mobile station is going to have an illuminated gas sign that will have the prices on it, similar to the Gulf station that's on the corner of Bay Road Walnut Road. And then if you go across the street from there, in Wenham, we feel Wenham's a very a piece of property and a town that we should be involved with. Right across from there is the open field. You know, they're elderly in that property. What's going to happen with that property in the next 10 to 20 years? If we proceed into the shopping center, when I first moved into the town, that shopping center was a brick building, 1-story, pretty much not very attractive, no landscaping in the property. The town owned a piece of property right in the middle of that parking lot, and the MBTA station was right there on the corner of Bay Road and Walnut Road. When the train came into town, it stopped, it blocked off Bay Road, so you could not pass either direction until the train left. Through negotiations with the MBTA, the tracks were moved down. The shopping center was allowed to expand, but when they expanded to create the CVS, they were required to landscape the parking lot and make it a great improvement to the shopping center visually. With that transaction occurred, Hamilton transferred the land that they owned in the middle of the parking lot to where the packaged liquor store is right now. The town then put together a proposal to develop that packaged liquor site. The town, I think, received $150,000 for the development group to purchase that land, where now you have a liquor store with residential above that. Go further down, the golf station. You know, what if that changes hands one day? I'm going to back up because Mike's Auto used to sell gas, then it became just a service station. Now it's a landscaping company that has bought that piece of property and moved their business into there. And that's a strategic piece of property right there that's right in the middle of town that's very critical to all of us, I think. And then the potential as you go further down 1A of those single pieces of property. So that's something to think about when we're working on this whole process, is that there's a lot of change going on in Hamilton. And we can have a lot of input in that, and putting in some new zoning bylaws of what we want to do, and working on some of the other problems that are in the town, the septic system and parking that's occurring. So something to think about tonight as we're going through this process. Brian had mentioned we've got a wastewater engineer that's going to come in and help educate us on how to manage wastewater. If you remember, a couple months ago, Jolie Heath, that's right next to the Black Cow, wanted to expand their offerings and have a sit-down lunch dinner menu, but they couldn't do it because the septic system wouldn't allow them to put in that kind of use. So if we work on some type of septic system or waste management system, maybe those kind of existing uses that some of us want to see can expand more. Off-street parking. I mentioned the new development that's going in down here on Willow Street. You know, if we can compensate with parking somehow, to put in remote spaces or to work out the transfer of, if you have a housing unit, typically you don't need parking during the day in the business. You can rotate when those, and trade off those spaces when they can be used as an option. Also, the more housing you put downtown, public transportation. You know, a lot of towns are compensating for, you know, if you're near public transportation, you don't need to do as much parking on your property as typically is required. And we could potentially do some remote parking somewhere else. So if you work here during the day, you park a couple blocks away and walk to where you need to go for your company. So that way, that first level wouldn't have to be all parking. It could be landscaped. It could be more retail in that lower level. Something to think about. Think about individual buildings versus buildings that have multiple uses in them. If you're on Railroad Ave, there's a lot of single-use buildings versus the one that, as you see the scaffolding out in front of it right now, it's got a lot of different uses in that building. So we could set up zoning bylaws that you can only do a single-use building, or you have the option to do multi-use buildings. You have retail on the first floor. Do you want a singular retail on the first floor, housing above, office above? Those are some things to consider when you consider height and consider uses in the building. Do you want one-story buildings, two-story buildings, three-story buildings, or four-story buildings? So that you can think about maybe some of the area along Willow Street where this new development is going could possibly handle 4 stories. You're not backing up to single-family residential houses. There's maybe some areas along Railroad Ave where 3 or 4 stories could be accommodated. But then there are other areas along there where you may really want to see 1-story buildings because you're really close to single-family 1-story houses. And appearance is the other thing to think about during this whole process tonight. You know, the packaged liquor store that's done. When that first came up, people really didn't like the appearance of that building. You know, now I think in general, people tend to like that. When we did the shred in 2009, that was one of the buildings that got a higher rating for appearance versus some of the other buildings that got lower ratings in town. And that versus the dentist building that's on Railroad Ave. Some people have really voiced their opinion that they don't like the second floor that was added and the appearance of that building. Again, zoning bylaws can be put together to control that kind of impact. So our mission tonight is to try to understand what people are looking for and get some new zoning bylaws put in that are maybe more current, that are put together for the kind of uses we want to see, the kind of appearances we want to see, and what we want Hamilton Village area to look like in about 10 to 20 years. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Sam, who's going to go through and show us some visuals and go through a working process for all of us. And Sam is from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, and we brought him on board to help us with this whole shred process. So, Sam?
Thank you, Bill. Can you all hear me? I have to be louder or not. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for your time and attending tonight. I'd first like to introduce my colleagues that I'm working with this evening from MAPC, Joan Blaustein, Chris Kushel. Chris, can you raise your hand? Tanya Paglia, Christine Cheatham, and Emily Capitore from the town of Wenham. The MAPC folks will be working with you to facilitate the table exercise following the presentation, and look forward to working with you. How many people here attended either one of the focus group sessions that we held earlier in the summer? Okay, great. Just very quickly, I'm going to run through the purpose of the study. It's a little bit, you will have to excuse me, I have a lot of information here, so I have to sort of look down more than I normally do. I like to try and keep eye contact with the people I'm looking at, but I've got a lot of information to work through. So we are the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, and we're partnering with the Council of Hamilton and Wenham to work with the community to create a vision. And as Bill and Brian both mentioned, eventually zoning. We are looking not only at zoning, but parcels. We're looking at transportation, network, environmental systems within the district, particularly, and bicycle and pedestrian connections as well. Because we have found that downtown development is really much more than, X's and O's of zoning. It's really how this all fits together, as we'll take a look at in a minute. The process that we're working on will include zoning recommendations, and again, this whole project was made possible by the Bar Foundation as part of a larger project working with your neighbors in Danvers and Beverly as well, to do the same kind of focusing work on some of their downtown areas as well. So we're going to be looking at land use and zoning and improving access for walking, bike, and transit within the neighborhood. Very briefly, purpose of the study, since we covered that a little bit, we're going to take a look at the role of downtowns and what purpose they serve, what they've done, and what we hope they can do again. A little bit of a demographic look at the focus area, the study area, and then we're going to spend about a half an hour because Hamilton and Wenham spent some time in 2009 and in their master planning process sort of going through the first steps. We've tried to take this an additional couple of steps and put together some scenario build-outs, and we'll take a look at those working our way down. We have 4 sites that you'd like to take a look at and just sort of react to. We've got MAPC folks here taking notes The purpose here is to really just sort of get your feedback, and it's meant to be more of a conversation than a lecture. So please do pipe up if you have questions. We'll go through these, and there is a fair amount of information. I apologize, I don't have a laser pointer tonight, but I will run back and forth, and we will point out the details. So those are mixed-use scenarios, and then finally we're going to spend some time in group discussions, in working with the EDC and the planners. We've crafted together a number of questions that we'd love to get your input on. Some are design-oriented, some are a bit more general in breakdown. This is really for the MAPC folks to be able to go back and write more informed and targeted recommendations for the kind of work that we're doing. So, again, we appreciate your time then. First of all, we're going to start a little bit with a demographic of who's in the room. This helps us understand better whom is attending our meetings and who is not. And as planners, of course, we're always seeking more information. You should all have in front of you a keyboard, a digital keypad, one of these. Just pick one up, and they've got numbers on them. And basically, let's see if we can close this up.
Response call.
What are we supposed to do with this? We're going to moderate.
That's great.
They're going to call me for the rest of the table.
Yeah, just raise your hand if you don't have a keypad. Yeah, and it's just vote 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5 on this Patriots question. You've sort of got a head start because you're already 4-0, so we wrote this question a little while ago. So just press the corresponding 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, and we'll see what's going on. You've got about 5 seconds left to vote, and we'll see what the results are. Whoops.
How do we know if it will respond?
You'll see it.
The Patriots are winning. I don't even like hockey.
How do we vote again?
I voted 5.
Yeah. Let's see what we got. All right. This is perhaps an incomplete poll. I was a little quick on the trigger, but a whole lot of folks think 41% more than 14 games this year, so very optimistic. Next questioner is $1. Where do you live? Which community? Results. All right, just about 80% from Hamilton. A few folks from Wenham. A couple of scatterings. Next question. Do you own a home or rent? See if it lines up with our research in the area.
Okay.
Just about right. About 80% all are single-family homeowners. It's very close to what we found in our research. And then, how long have you lived in your home? Okay, a lot of veterans. 20 plus years, 36%. What's your age? This is anonymous.
Difference is it.
This does not go to the NSA, by the way, and they're closed, so it's, okay, 70 or better. And how you choose to define yourself. How do you identify yourself? role of the downtowns in the region, just very quickly. With the work that we're doing this evening is really very much related to what's happening across the MAPC region as a whole, which is we basically work with communities, about 100 communities inside of the 495 Beltway. But we're seeing downtown revitalization as really a very key movement that's happening really all the way across the region, particularly with younger and older residents who are eager and seeking to move back into the downtown. It's happening across the region. They're looking for locations that are walkable, have a lot of activity, or more so than the typical suburban location, have a diversity of housing choices as we're looking at larger homes, a lot of folks, empty nesters, older folks, and younger people looking for smaller housing choices. Better choice for daily needs and services, restaurants, culture, and places for leisure such as parks. Development within the region, around our regional centers, our small cities, downtowns, is really very supportive of our particular, the regional plan for growth, which is really much more around compact urban development and really the preservation, strong preservation ethic for outstanding open space resources that we are particularly favored with in this part of Essex County. So this is sort of the general theme for the type of development that we'd like to see. And again, we have the blueprint, we've done this, we've been there before. What we're really looking at doing is reconstructing and revitalizing some of our downtown. So focus overview of the study area. What we've done to get a statistically significant snapshot of this rather small study area is to swing a half-mile radius. That's that dotted line that goes around the inside study area. Hope that you can see that that's the space going down. So the middle is the train track, and green is preserved open space, I believe. And you can't really see the main corridors, but that's the heart and soul of it. Really, the idea of the study is to try and incorporate a holistic look at approach to the areas by taking into account the overall vision of the area, rather than just looking at zoning or pedestrian or transportation or environmental inputs. We really try and take a look at all three. We look at specific recommendations for transportation, zoning and development, as well as environmental measures. We hope to build in some green infrastructure looks into this project for recommendations as well, treating of stormwater particularly. And we're trying to develop this viewpoint really with the idea of balancing existing uses with the demand for additional development within the downtown, while realizing that many of the properties in the study area, as Bill mentioned, really may not redevelop for some time. This is planning for fun, but planning for practical use as well, because as we say in planning, zoning is your preview of coming attractions. So what you have is largely what you will get. Planning ahead in any redevelopment takes time, and getting it right takes time. And usually these small studies are just a starting point. There's usually a lot of discussion and movement beyond the initial recommendations. Just wanted to touch very briefly on some of the key themes that we found from the focus groups this year. We ran a couple of focus groups, one over at Henderson's with the business folks downtown, as well as a residential focus group within this very room. Brian mentioned that. These are some of the key findings that brought us back, and some of this work was done. This is sort of a pull forward from the 09 charrette as well, but when we come back into a town, we need to check back in. So more active downtown area in character of the neighborhood. Folks want a better mix of uses, residential and retail together. Ease of getting around has come up quite a bit. Wider sidewalks, better pedestrian connections to areas that are either blocked or have trouble with connecting each other with themselves right now. And then wanting to connect downtown assets. So we've heard a lot about getting from the park, the community house, to the downtown, and doing it safely, getting back down to the library, getting through the park over here, back over into Wenham as well. So a lot of the same common themes. So we were asked to take a look at some of the residential density, and we've got the same map here on the wall. Basically what it's showing is just residential housing density. The darker colors, the mustard colored brown is 0.25 to 0.5 acres, and the lighter colors are the medium density, which is, I'm sorry, I've got it backwards. I've got high density as the darker colors. So the northwest quadrant up there, as you might see, is a higher density, and then as you go further away from town, the lighter colors beginning into, it's basically a split between quarter and half acre lots. There's some stuff that's less than 10,000, some historical lots that have existed for many, many years that are far less than 10,000. But the idea is that most people feel that density is something that doesn't exist in their community. And most people are living in far more dense situations than they realize. They're used to it. They see it every day. So we try to point out to them that really there's a fair amount of density right here. It's got quarter acre lot is basically 4 units per acre. So figure a 10,000 square foot lot. And again, there's a liberal mix of much smaller lots in the downtown area where somebody in 1840 set up a blacksmith shop on 4,500 square feet, and nobody thought anything about it. They sold them the land and off he went, and it's still there today. So just some demographics on population. One of the things that we're seeing is a fairly high percentage, both of older folks and 25 to 34-year-olds for a town this size. Very attractive demographic for downtown living. Lots of polls and studies indicate that these are the folks, older folks and younger folks, who aren't necessarily interested in living out in a larger house in the suburbs, but want to be downtown, they want to be close to commuter rail, they want to use their bikes, et cetera, et cetera. We're hearing this time and time again, want to have things to do. Yes, Rick?
Sam, can you read that? Because it's very hard to read the lettering of the age groups on the left-hand side.
Sure. Starting at the bottom, this is less than 18, 18 to 34, 35 to 34.
Knock the lights down.
Can you turn it down a little bit? There you go. How's that? Better? So you can see there's lots of little kids, or younger folks, I call them little kids now. This is within the study area. This is the half-mile radius again. But really a fairly significant cohort of older folks and folks who are indicating regionally and nationally that they want to be close to mixed use. Yes?
I wonder if the people who wanted a more active village gave you an indication of what they meant by that. It's a curious term to me. I don't know what we're looking for.
Well, active village would usually include better bike and ped connections, more variety of uses downtown. We've heard that quite a bit. Better amenities for pedestrians and bicyclists to get around. Easy access to the